On a hot Saturday afternoon in Africa, a full house in a sports stadium for an event that has nothing to do with sport. In these parts, not only are they football crazy, but they're also mad about the movies. For the first time, there was a South African delegation, including, controversially, Winnie Mandela. The crowd was 35,000, all this for the opening of FESPACO, the Pan-African Film Festival. Every 2 years it attracts filmmakers from all over Africa to one of the continent's poorest countries. You don't have to look very far to find that poverty. We filmed a few hundred yards from the stadium. The average monthly wage in Burkina Faso is just £20. 80% of the population can't read or write. Hardly anyone has a television. African filmmakers began meeting here informally in 1969. And as their meetings evolved into a festival, they sought to prove a point.
In the poorest country of Africa, we can produce films if there is a political will. And now, in Africa, this country is one of the poorest. And every year, you have 3 or 4 or 5 films because of what the filmmakers decided 25 years ago. Why it is possible? Because in Africa, the population, the people, go to the cinema. Even thieves, they stole money to go to the cinema.
Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, has a population of less than 500,000. But it still has 12 cinemas, as well as a special monument to African filmmakers. The shapes are borrowed from the film industry, from camera lenses and film cans. The result, a monument and a roundabout. What with the dust and the quality of some of the prints, and indeed some of the projection equipment, cinema exhibition in Africa isn't quite what it might be. But unlike the West, for many Africans, cinema remains the popular form of visual entertainment, and they get to see their movies under the trees and under the stars. There's a practical reason for seeing films in the open air. It's cheap. Tickets are about 15 pence. The price in the few air-conditioned cinemas is 10 times as much. For many African intellectuals, film was and is the only way they could find a voice.
Je faisais des études de mathématiques en France et les questions sont posées à moi comment traduire mes points de vue, mon opinion dans une Afrique avec des populations analphabètes à 60%, voire 70%. Et au sortir de la colonisation, il y avait presque rien. Les gens étaient loin de comprendre les phénomènes qui déterminent l'évolution de leurs conditions. Et donc, par conséquent, j'ai choisi le cinéma.
African filmmakers first really got noticed at European film festivals in the 1980s. Some made films dissecting the colonial era, usually in a critical light. Others hark back to a time before the white man arrived and to African roots in traditional village storytelling. Yaba, made in Burkina Faso, is such a film. It took the jury prize at Caen in 1989.
Bila, Rabema, ana lori. No for shit dan batation. So si dan family never find it.
Some Africans are dismissive of this type of filmmaking, claiming it panders to a European stereotype of how Africans live. With the French subsidizing much of the filmmaking in its former colonies in West Africa, the accusation is of neo-colonialism.
France has a certain policy on African cinema. They put a little bit money in every film. It's their way to defend Francophonia, it's to defend their interest, and the African filmmakers are making a queue, one after the other, to have a small part of the money. And they are trembling to say, are they going to like my film or not? Please. That is a slave situation.
This is the paradox of African cinema. The films, and indeed the festival, still rely on money from Europe. Although in the case of Burkina Faso, the Africans are doing much to help themselves. The film festival in Ouagadougou comes with a huge market, which spreads across the city centre. Here is a serious hawking opportunity. The festival brings a lot of money into the country, somewhere in the region of £2 million. The stallholder can make as much here in a week as most of his countrymen make in a decade. The government subsidises the festival, not least because it puts Burkina Faso on the map. At night, Ouagadougou has a modest, festive air, with its threads of coloured lights. A 1,000 miles away is the Brasha Neon of Abidjan, capital of another former French colony, the Ivory Coast. It's richer than its neighbour, but cinema here is just as popular. Even in the immigrant quarter, people go to the movies 3 or 4 times a week. What they get is a tasteful mix of Hollywood, Bollywood and Kung Fu, as well as some memorable titles. Just occasionally they also show an African film like Au Nom du Christ, winner of the main prize at Ouagadougou in 1993.
D'abord, ça a été une fierté nationale. Et ça, c'est un grand réconfort pour nous parce qu'on vient à un festival, on a un prix, et puis tout le pays vous porte. Parce que vous avez quelque part fait ressurgir en eux ce sentiment de nationalisme et tout ça. Ça, c'est très important parce qu'on vous aborde dans la rue, on vous félicite. Au feu rouge, le taximan vous adresse un bonjour amical.
Last week, a young Ivorian girl, Diara Souba, left on a special school trip to the film festival in Burkina Faso. Her mother took her to the airport past the high-rise skyline of Abidjan. We caught up with her and her school chums a few days later, driving through the market in Ouagadougou, and we asked for her impressions.
Yes, okay.
À Abidjan, il y a des films américains et tout, bon, qu'on a l'habitude de voir. Et ici, c'est pendant ce festival, en fait, ça reflète, disons, mes origines. C'est pour ça que ça m'intéresse quoi. L'histoire africaine et tout, ça m'intéresse.
In the centenary year of cinema, a national film archive is now being established in Burkina Faso. Already they've completed the main building, and some 170 films are in store. They include what's believed to be the first film ever directed by an African, a simple love story called Samba, made in 1928. The hope is that the collection will grow and grow. Within 3 years, there should be some 500 films, most from film institutes in Paris, Berlin and London. Modern African filmmakers will be donating their work. The words Burkina Faso mean the country of incorruptible men. Most people live in the bush and work the land. In a village called Balole, some 20 miles outside Ouagadougou, lives an old man called Zonga Timbila. No one knows exactly how old he is. Some believe he could be 96. He certainly had a full life, 9 wives, and according to his grandson, he's fathered up to 100 children. As the village elder, Zongo's responsible for passing on its history by word of mouth. But with that tradition fast disappearing, Africans now have a saying. When an old man dies, his library dies with him. More than ever, Africans have a reason to tell their stories on film, to keep them for all generations and for all time.